Hello, friends. As my canoe drifts along the Tigris, the golden sun dips toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ruins of ancient cities. I can almost see the ziggurats rising in the distance, massive stepped towers that once seemed to touch the heavens. To the Mesopotamians, these weren't just architectural wonders, they were literal stairways for the gods. Now, let me take you back to the days when Mesopotamian cities were ruled by divine favor. Every major city had a patron deity, and their temple was the city's beating heart. In Uruk, it was the temple of Inanna, later known as Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. In Nippur, it was Enlil, the storm god. And in Babylon, the mighty Marduk reigned supreme. But let's talk about the ziggurats themselves. These towering, multi-tiered structures were the centerpiece of religious life. Imagine a massive step pyramid with terraced platforms topped by a shrine. The famous ziggurat of Ur, for example, stood over 100 feet tall, basically the ancient Mesopotamian version of a skyscraper. And they didn't even have cranes. Now, unlike Egyptian pyramids, ziggurats weren't tombs, they were temples. The Mesopotamians believed that their gods needed a proper place to reside on earth, and the higher the shrine, the closer it was to the heavens. Makes sense, right? If you were a god, you'd want a penthouse suite, not a ground floor apartment. But don't get the wrong idea. Only priests and select officials were allowed to climb the ziggurats and enter the shrines. Regular folks, they had to stick to the courtyards below. I can imagine some poor farmer staring up at the towering ziggurat, thinking, I brought a perfectly good goat for sacrifice, and I can't even see the shrine? Speaking of sacrifices, Mesopotamian religious festivals were lavish affairs. The most famous was the Akitu festival, held during the spring equinox in Babylon. This was no ordinary celebration. It was a 12-day cosmic party. The people paraded statues of the gods through the streets, performed elaborate rituals, and held massive feasts. Think of it as Mesopotamian Mardi Gras, but with more incense and fewer beads. The highlight of Akitu, the king had to humble himself before the gods. As part of the ritual, the high priest slapped the king across the face. Why? To symbolically show that even the king was beneath the gods. Can you imagine? One day you're ruling an empire, and the next, you're getting smacked by a priest in front of a crowd. But the temples weren't just for ceremonies, they were also economic powerhouses. Temples owned massive tracts of land, employed workers, and stored grain and treasures. Think of them as part religious center, part bank, and part government office. The priests running these temples had enormous influence, often rivaling the kings themselves. As I paddle along the river, I picture the smoke of sacrifices rising into the sky, the chants of priests echoing across the courtyards, and the hopeful prayers of farmers asking for rain and good harvests. But while Mesopotamian temples were places of prayer and devotion, a new power was rising in the north, one that had little interest in divine mercy. The Assyrians, with their ironclad armies and brutal tactics, were about to rewrite the rules of Mesopotamia with blood and steel. Join me next time as we explore the rise of the Assyrian Empire, where war was a divine calling and terror was their signature tactic.